Click on the subscribe button, especially the bell on the right side. Otherwise, you will miss the latest videos.
Hello everyone, in this video, I want to talk about Novak Djokovic and his Australian saga. We all know in the last few weeks, the whole drama around his participation in Australian Open unfolded. Today is 18th of January 2022, and we know that on Sunday, the 16th of January, um, he was told that his visa was cancelled second time in the row, and he has no other choice but to leave Australia and then say goodbye to Australian Open 2022. So a lot of drama has happened in the last few weeks, right, about Novak's participation in Australian Open. We know that he is one of the greatest tennis player ever, and some claim that he's the greatest when it comes to tennis, right? He has won so many Grand Slams. He's tied up with the 20 Grand Slam titles with Rafael Nadal and also Roger Federer, right? So and we know that he has stayed at the ATP ranking of number one for longest number of weeks. He's almost just behind Steffi Graf, and then he's like one of the greatest player of tennis as we know today, right? So now what I wanted to do through this video is I wanted to kind of see through the lens of astrology as to what happened to him, what dashas are running, and is his chart really telling us that all these events are about to unfold in his life, and see why this happened, just so that we all understand, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and take you through Novak Djokovic chart, and this chart is available in Saptarishis Astrology's desk app. In the celebrity section, if you go and search for Novak's chart, so here are his birth details. He was born on 22nd May of 1987. Birth time is 23:25, and he was born in Belgrade, Serbia. So if you look at his birth chart, he's born with Sagittarius ascendant, with Moon, Jupiter, Rahu in the 4th house in the sign Pisces. Then we have Venus in sign Aries, and then we have Sun and Mercury in sign Taurus. Mars is in sign Gemini in the 7th house, and then Ketu is in the 10th house in sign Virgo, and Saturn is there in the sign Scorpio, and Saturn is a retrograde planet in his chart, right? So if you see his chart, you have Jupiter, which is in its own house, Pisces. Apart from that, there are no exalted planets in his chart, and Saturn is the only retrograde planet in his chart. And I'm discussing only the D1 chart. I'm not going into the divisional chart because the birth time accuracy, right? And he is born in Purvashada Nakshatra. Sun is in Kritika, and then we have Moon, Uttara Bhadrapad, Mars in Adra. Venus is in Ashwini, 4th Pada. Saturn is in Jyeshtha, and then Rahu is in Reti. This is how his planets are placed in his chart. So I want to do the chart analysis using 3 different aspects. So I want to do the chart analysis based on the Vimshotri Dashas. Then I want to talk about the transit, and I also want to touch upon circular chart, because this is like one of the most dramatic event in the life of Novak Djokovic, right? So I want to see if the circular charts, if the transit, if the Vimshotri Dasha, all are showing me the event which happened to him, right? And it's a very sad story. It's a very, as a tennis lover, as a tennis follower, you will feel that why this is happening to him, what's going on with him, right? And it's a kind of unpleasant experience one has to go through. But let's look at his dasha sequence to understand what's going on. So if we look at Vimshotri Dasha, he's currently running the Mahadasha of Venus. And under Venus Mahadasha, he's running the Antardasha of Sun and Pratyantar Dasha of Jupiter. So this is basically the Dasha sequence that he's running. Venus Mahadasha, Sun Antardasha, and then Jupiter Pratyantar Dasha. First and the foremost is Mahadasha is of Venus. So Venus Mahadasha, Venus is the 11th lord as well as the 6th lord in his chart, which means Venus is supposed to give him a lot of achievements, a lot of income, publicity, a lot of name, fame, a lot of achievement, a lot of success. And Venus is in trine, so the promise of getting the positive results are higher. But Venus also suffers from the stigma of being the 6th lord also. 6th house, as we know, is the house of obstructions, house of litigations, house of court cases, house of enemies, house of loans, house of health, and all these things, right? So if you have followed his case, you probably know that one of the reasons why he was denied his entry into Australian Open is that because he was not vaccinated and he chose not to get vaccinated, right? And then he applied for visa and he applied for exemptions and he was granted visa by the Australian authorities, and then his visa was cancelled twice, right? So all this is happening because of the vaccination, because of the health and the health related matters, right? So health issues are seen from the sixth house, and we know that he did not, he chose not to get vaccination for COVID-19. So why this drama is happening? Because we have the Mahadasha of Venus, which is the sixth lord. So it is triggering some events related to his achievements, also some events and controversies regarding the health issues, right? So we saw that because this COVID saga, he is not able to participate in Australian Open. And then we have Antardasha of Sun. Sun is also sitting in the sixth house. So again, sixth house is getting activated here again, right? And Sun being the ninth lord, and Sun is also the government. So he will be under crosshairs with the government authorities, is what we can say by looking at this combination, right? And the Sun is with Mercury. Mercury is the 10th lord and the 7th lord. So something to do with the karma. So his karma is getting obstructed because of the issues that he's having with the government authorities or higher authorities, right? So that's what is going on in his life. And this third level dasha is of Jupiter, right? So Jupiter is there in the 4th house. It is aspecting the 10th house and so on and so forth. So this is what we can see from just looking at the dashas. Now, another point to note here is that all these planets are 212 to each other. Sun is there in the 6th house. 12th from Sun is the planet Venus. 12th from Venus is your planet Jupiter, right? So all these planets are in the 212 combination. So which is again not a very great placements for the planets during the dashas, right? So Venus, 12th from Sun generally considered good, but when Dasha of Venus and Sun both are running, then it will create problems because Venus would Venus would give the results of the second house. And the other thing to note here is Venus is the lord of the sign which is occupied by Sun. So Venus is like sixth lord is gone to the 12th from itself. So that's another thing to keep in mind when we are analyzing these events. Right. So the other thing to note about his chart is that he has a combination of Sun Saturn opposition. So Sun Saturn are in 1-7 position to each other. Now Sun and Saturn, Sun is your higher authorities and Saturn is the problems or the obstructions in the life, right? So typically people who have Sun Saturn combination in their chart, or if they have Sun Saturn in 1-7 position to each other, they will typically have problems with the higher authorities. And that's what happens to Novak very often, right? So he's expelled from the tournaments because some mistakes, some small mistakes that he will commit. And because of that, he's asked to leave the match. He's banned from the match. He's banned from the tournaments and so on and so forth, right? So if the same mistakes is committed by, let's say, Roger Federer, those mistakes are kind of ignored because they are so pretty, right? But when Novak creates the mistakes, when he gets into those small things, he's penalized. And why this is happening? Because you have the problem, you have Sun and Saturn, which are opposition to each other. One other thing to note here is that a lot of people do not like Novak. Why? Because he comes from a very small country, Serbia. And then as generally people understand that tennis is a rich man's game, right? So you will have people from developing country, most developed and most advanced countries. They will participate in the tennis tournaments and they will make a lot of money out of tennis, right? So if you talk about Roger Federer, he comes from Switzerland, and then you have Rafael Nadal who comes from Spain. So these are like the most developed countries as you compare it with Serbia. Serbia is a smaller country. It's not as developed as Switzerland or Spain for that matter, right? So a lot of people do not like Novak because of that reason. So he has to face a lot of criticism very often, more often than others, because of all these reasons. And now let's look at the transit. So what's happening with the transit? So if you go to transit module, and if you look at the transit for today, so all the planets in red are the transiting planet versus all the planets in black are the natal planet. So what we have here is that we have Sun and Saturn and Mercury in the second house in the sign Capricorn in transit. So when we take his ascendant chart, when we look from the Sagittarius ascendant, Sun, Saturn, and Mercury are in second house. Saturn placement is second house. It's considered not so good. And then most importantly, the planets, the Dasha planets, right? So Venus is there in the first house in ascendant, and Venus is retrograde. Then we have Jupiter, which is in the third house. And then we have Rahu, which is in the sixth house, right? And Ketu goes over the Saturn. So this is the transit placement of the different planets. Now, important thing to note here is that we know that the planets which are in Vimshotri Dasha scheme, the deeper you go, the more impactful the planets are, right? So we know that he's running Dasha of Venus, Antar Dasha of Sun, and Pratyantar Dasha of Jupiter. So Jupiter has a larger say than Venus and Sun, right? Now, if we look at the transit chart, what we will notice is that Jupiter is in his third house. Jupiter in third house is considered to be one of the most inauspicious placement of Jupiter in transit. So they say that the worst placement for Jupiter in transit is third from ascendant or moon. So here we can see that Jupiter is in the third house from his ascendant. Now Jupiter is also in the 12th from its natal position. So both ways, if you see, Jupiter is not in the great position. So that's one of the reasons why he has to struggle, why he has to strive, and why he has to face all the opposition that he has to face during this time. Right? Sun is with Saturn. So again, Sun-Saturn combination is there. We know that this combination can create and will create problems with people in authority. Right, and he has this innate in his natal chart also. Sun-Saturn combination is there. It's in opposition from each other, right? So if you have those kind of placements already in the chart, and if these planets are activated through different dasha schemes, then it is more than likely that you will face those kind of results. So that's what is happening in his chart also. Another very interesting thing that we should note here is that Rahu is in the sixth house, and Rahu goes over the Sun and Mercury. Sun is the government, Rahu is the foreign, and his obstructions are coming from the foreign government. Novak has won 9 Australian Open tournaments till date. It could have been his 10th Australian Open title if he were to participate in this tournament, but that did not happen because the government immigration minister of Australia denied or cancelled his visa, not just one but twice. And I do not believe that this has happened to any of the other top seeded players, at least in the recent past. I mean, I'm not aware, and maybe I'm not as educated about tennis history, but this is something which is once in a blue moon. It's a very, very rare incident that's happening today. Right. So having won Australian Open for record number of times, so he holds the highest number of times anybody would have won Australian Open. So he tops that chart. So this is where you will find that okay, trouble with foreign government will happen during this period. Right? So that's exactly what's going on. Jupiter, we know that it's not in the great place for him. And then we have Saturn also is in the second house. And we know that there are some controversies, there are some discussions about kind of paperwork that he submitted to Australian authorities for getting the exception for visa, and his travel document also were not up to date. They did not reflect that he did travel to countries like Spain and other countries in the last 15 days or so. So there are some things which are not very. There are and he apologized also that he could have stayed indoors. He could have avoided public gatherings when he was tested positive for corona and all that. So again, we know that there are some things which could have been done better on his part, on Novak's part, right? So again, second house, third house. Third house is typically seen for documentation, and Mercury also is seen for documentation. Rahu is the mistake. So again, there were mistakes in the documentation which he provided to Australian government officials, and that is one of the reasons why his visa was cancelled. So Rahu over Sun creates conflict with foreign government. Rahu with Mercury, Rahu over Mercury, that create problem with the paperwork. So that's what is going on in his chart right now. And we can see how beautiful it is to be seen through transit also. Right. Now, I do pay a lot of attention, and I urge all of you to also look at transit Ashtakvarga, because that holds a very important key. Because what happens is a lot of time when you have adverse placement, like in this case, Jupiter is going through the third house from ascendant, right? So this is one of the adverse placement for Jupiter in transit. But in the same place, if Jupiter receives high Ashtak Varga points, then Jupiter will not give the negative results, right? So this is where you need to pay attention to the Ashtak Varga and see if the planet is getting a high Ashtak Varga score, right? And if the planet gets a high Ashtak Varga score in transit, then probably it's not going to harm you as much as it could, right? So let's look at the transit dynastic Varga score for these planets. So starting with the Mahadasha Lord, so Venus is the Mahadasha Lord. Venus gets 4 points, which is mixed. It is not good or not bad. So it's a mixed bag here with Venus. Second level we have is Sun. So Sun is getting the score of 5, which is good, which is better than average. So 4 is the average, 8 is maximum. So it is more than the average. But we should also remember that Sun is also conjoining with Saturn during transit, right? So which will impede Sun for giving good results. Then the third level planet is Jupiter. So Jupiter is getting a score of 3 in transit Vinastak Varga, so which is less than the average. So if you see here, Jupiter getting the score of 3 will give you ear diseases, loss of vitality, and it will give you distress. So if you can see here, his visa is getting cancelled. He's going and fighting the cases in court, and then he's pleading. He's going after the lawyers, and he's getting all the. So again, he's in the middle of conflict, right? So he's distressed at this point, and then he's told not to participate. You cannot participate. So it's a very unpleasant time for him, and that's what exactly is going on, and that's what the transit dynastic work of Jupiter is also telling, that he has to go through some stress in life at this point of time, and that's exactly what's happening here. So even the transit is strongly suggesting that such kind of event is bound to happen in this time for him, right? So the third different way of analyzing this event is, I want to use the circular chart. Right? So circular chart is something which was highly recommended by late C.S. Patel Saha, and we have done videos on how to see circular chart, how to construct circular chart. Badoria ji has given a beautiful explanation about this chart, and he's the one who's like, this is something which is not to be missed, right? And especially when you are talking about life-changing events, when you are talking about very, very important, significant events in person's life, then this chart is going to give you snapshot way of looking at those years in anybody's life, right? So if you go under chakras section, and if you click on this icon for circular chart, you'll be able to find a chart like this. So this is the circular chart for Novak Djokovic, right? So he's currently running 35th year of his life, right? So if you see in the outermost circle, you will find 35 years, which falls under third pada of Aslesha Nakshatra, right? So this is where 35th running year is to be seen. Now, one thing which probably is not known to many people who refer to this chart is that when you are analyzing the circular chart, you also have to look at the trinal nakshatras. So we know that 35th year will fall in Aslesha Nakshatra, which is a nakshatra of Mercury. So you also have to look at the planets which are sitting in the nakshatra of Mercury. And especially the third pada of Mercury's nakshatra is what you have to pay attention to. We know that Mercury has 3 nakshatras. One is Aslesha, other is Jyeshtha, third is Revati. And then we have to pay attention to the third pada, because third pada of Mercury's Aslesha nakshatra is activated in the 35th year. So if we look into Jyeshtha nakshatra, third pada, what we find the planet Saturn. Saturn is a natural malefic planet, And in his natal chart also, in his D1 chart also, Saturn is the lord of second house in the third house. So again, Saturn cannot be considered as a as auspicious planet in his chart. Saturn is the planet of distress, obstructions, and it can give you, it can involve you, engage you in the court cases, legal battles, legal fights, and that's what exactly happened to Novak Djokovic in this year, right? So, so we can see from the circular chart also, it's kind of clearly telling us that there are going to be some challenges coming your way. I mean, if I were to consult Novak, then I would tell him that, okay, that be prepared for some of the challenges which will come your way. But Saturn, as we know, it's a planet of hard work. It appreciates all the hard work. It appreciates the honesty, right? So I'm sure if Saturn can be pleased by all the hard work, dedication, and honesty and truthfulness, right? So all these things, if we tread the right path, if we follow all the rules of law, then I am sure this Saturn will give you good results for all the hard work. So this is how we can see all the events which happened during this period of time in Novak's life. Again, not so pleasant events, but again, astrologically, we can see that these events through multiple ways, right? So we saw the events through Vimshotri Dasha, we also saw these events through the transit, and we also saw these events through the circular chart. So this is how we can analyze such kind of events in anybody's life. Again, good and bad, both kind of results can be analyzed in a similar fashion. We should also consider about happy events, and we should also look into the positive side of things. But this is my analysis. I hope you like it. I hope that he comes out of this saga really strong, and he probably wins he may win the next Grand Slam that he's about to participate in 2022. So my best wishes to him, and my best wishes to all the tennis lovers. Hope to see the best of tennis in 2022. Thanks for watching. Bye.